come to me with solutions and tell me that it's going to be tricky and we'll find a way around it and we'll work together, but don't tell me it can't be done. And so I think that is the key to success in anything. And I kind of teach that to my girls of going, it is that resilience that you need, right, in life. I think both theatre and immersive experiences can take you on this journey that is so impactful. I'm always interested in the upcoming talent, especially in today's society. I think we really need to support them to grow.
Welcome to the StageLink podcast, your access and connection to the live performing arts. In this podcast, you'll hear from some of the industry's most inspiring people from around the globe who create magic on stage and backstage. Our guests share their knowledge, passion, and the real stories of how a show comes together. We hope you enjoy this episode. And welcome to the StageLink podcast. My name is Anna Robb, and today we are speaking with Catherine Hartfield. Catherine, I was thinking this morning before speaking to you about the first time that we met. I think it was around 2014 in Wuhan. Was that correct?
Yes, we had been trying to get you over for months and trying to entice you to come and join us. And it was a hard slog, but we eventually got you.
Borrowed me from Macau for a period of time.
We did borrow you.
Yeah.
I think thank gosh we did. You brought order and from chaos. So
I love that. I was trying to think, I've got your bio, but I really maybe wanted you to put in your own words for our audiences, what you do, because I think you've done a lot of different roles in your career in the arts, and we will talk about what you're doing now, but I think it's really important for people to understand in the industry how it's not very linear and you can jump from many different roles and opportunities. And I think you're one of those people that have successfully done that in quite some interesting places and spaces around the world. So if you could just, in your own words, sort of describe for our audience what it is that you do.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question because I put the fact that I am where I am today totally down to my chopping and changing and jumping ship and going to different careers. So I actually grew up in the industry, in television and theatre, and I got to about the age of 18, 19 where I looked around as a performer, and I'm like, oh gosh, like this is all about networking. This is all about like looks and, the next best thing and everything. And I was like, I don't know that I'm up for that. I don't know that I want to have that as the focus of my career. People constantly looking at photos of me and deciding whether I was pretty enough or too, and I ran, like when I was about 19, I ran an agency, but I was still in that agency and I had submitted myself along with other people for a job. And when the casting agent called, this is full disclosure, I went through everyone, yes. And then she was like, I said, and what about Catherine? And she's like, she's a bit odd looking, don't you think? And I was like, yeah, I agree with that, and moved on. And then from that point, I'm like, nah, that was kind of the switch for me. And so then I ended up auditioning for High Five, which was an Australian show, and it got down to 6 of us. And that is actually the story of my life, really. It got down to 6 of us, and then the producer went back to Channel 9 and said, hey, can we have 6 people instead of 5? And they're like, nope, we've already got the High Five thing, so it wouldn't work, etc. So they gave me the job of the choreographer. And then as I worked through that, I started to learn the business a bit more. And then I was like, well, if you want to keep me full time, perhaps I can work in the business side of things. So that was really the change for me. And then anything that came along, especially if people said I couldn't do it, it just gave me the motivation to do it. So yeah, I think I went from choreographer to the high five coordinator, which just involved like everything from, and that was a great learning curve because I had to deal with merchandise and the fan club and looking after people that were the same age as me, but somehow I had to be the responsible one and being their tour manager and their artistic director and and their choreographer. So that was a massive learning curve for me, which I was really grateful for. And then I went on to notice that I could run a performing arts studio off the back of the fact that I had been the high five choreographer, right? So that got success really quickly. And then from that, I kind of learned a little bit more about running a business. And then I moved to England and then I did theatre producing. And then someone said, it was, do you want to come and work for AEG Theme Star? I'm like, yeah, sure. And that was in a commercial role. And then someone texted me and said, hey, do you know anyone that would be good as a business operations manager? And that was for Dragone. And I'm like, yeah, me, which was awkward because he was actually really asking for recommendations. But then I ended up getting that job. And then I recognized that we needed to bring 95 people into the country in China. And so I'm like, how are we going to do this? And I went to them and I said, we're going to need a company. And no one was interested. So I said, okay, if I do the research, can I set it up? Because I just like adding to my bow. And they're like, fine. And then I did all the research. And back then it was paper. So I delivered like a stack that big. And they're like, cool, go ahead and set it up. I'm like, cool, it needs a general manager. And lucky they said yes. And then I went back, started my own company again. I really don't like having my own company because the stress of paying people when clients don't pay was just too much pressure for me. And then I ended up, a friend texted me and said, hey, this is a job at where I am now, which is Weta Workshop. You should apply. And I read it. And you know how like you read job descriptions and you're like, yeah, I can do most of that and I can blag the rest. I was like, I can do this. So I applied. And then long story short, I got it. And then I worked my way up from like their studio manager to their executive producer. And now I'm the head of Immersive there. So I think just saying yes, I mean, there's the drama game, right? Yes. And that's kind of what I live my life by. And yeah, now it's taking me to, the next stage of my career, which is great.
Were there any growing pains on the business front? Because like you didn't have any formal training on business, right? So how did you sort of overcome those hurdles? Because setting up a company in China is, I can't imagine the easiest thing to do.
Honestly, I tell you the biggest hurdle, and I really see this with people that work for me, is there's a period of time you go through. So you're in your 20s and you're ambitious and you're not aware of the boundaries. And this is something I use when we're deciding who to dedicate as a creative on a project is, do they need to know the boundaries? For example, is it a museum and they need to know all the rules? Therefore, this person. Is this new kind of fresh blood that doesn't know the boundaries and therefore they're going to go crazy and then we can pull it back. So in my 20s, I think didn't know the boundaries, did anything. In my 30s, I think there's something weird that happens where we lose a bit of confidence and we're always kind of trying to work out. We realize that it's not all kind of smooth sailing and we start to get a little bit, okay, what's the rest of my life? So I think the 30s while I was at Dragone was quite tricky. There were a lot of tears. There were a lot of like trying to work out what was going on, who to trust, who not to trust, and that's in any work environment. And then, getting into my 40s, it's this beautiful time where you really don't care. So I think the 30s was the most challenging part for me. I think it was good back then because there wasn't ChatGPT, social media, etc. So it was pure research and it was purely feeding my brain. And yeah, I mean, it was more challenging because of my personal growth rather than the business side of things because I'm a nerd and I like to learn.
Yeah, I love that. For those who don't know what Weta Workshop is, can you give us a brief about where you are based right now and what Weta Workshop does?
So I'm in New Zealand, which is the quietest place on the planet. So having gone from Beijing to New Zealand was an adjustment. Weta Workshop, best known for Lord of the Rings. So that's kind of their foundation. They were founded in film and they have 7 divisions. They have immersive experiences, which is what I had. They have a design studio, which goes to film, game shop, game and immersive. And then we have our manufacture team, which do film and immersive. And then we have a creative media team, which caters for the China market. That's kind of, so we have a B2C, B2B area that's creative services. And then we have a B2C, which we have a tourism offering. So we have one in Wellington and one in Auckland. And then we have, so if you're ever in Auckland or Wellington, go see those. The Auckland one is called Unleashed, and it's our founder, Richard Taylor's brain exploding. And you really sense that when you go through it. And then they have a consumer products division that's been going for like 30 years. So when you see like Gandalf and all of those figurines, that's from us. And then they have a game studio. So they've just released their first game, Tales of the Shire, which was a great learning curve for Weta. So yeah, it's a big company. It used to be Weta like overall. So it had Weta Digi and Weta Effects, and they're the people that kind of do the after effects of things. And that's Peter Jackson's company. And then they've now split. And so Tanya Roger and Richard Taylor own Weta Workshop, and then Peter Jackson and Fern own Weta Digi.
It's very broad, kind of like so many divisions in a very large company. I actually didn't realize it was that large.
Yeah, it is, and it's just expanding because the film industry is obviously truncating somewhat, especially with the evolution of AI. So it's not where we want to put all our eggs, because who knows what the future of film is. It's very hard to be able to cost a designer against something that AI, while it couldn't do it to the standard that our designers do, it still gets the point across. So for that reason, we've had to diversify. But mostly Weta was founded on film and has worked on hundreds and hundreds of films, mainly Avatar, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. There may be another Lord of the Rings. I think Andy Serkis has made it public that he is doing something about Gollum. So yeah, that's all
Amazing.
to come.
So as a head of immersive experiences, what does that sector of Weta sort of take on, and what are some examples of their projects?
So I guess, like, in terms of being head of immersive, my role is exactly kind of what it was at Dragone, was to go, okay, where are the emerging markets? So China is an established market now. Obviously, you and I were there in the days of significant investment, and that's died down a little bit now, but it's recovering from COVID and it's starting to expand again. So although we have people that are more focused in China than I am, I kind of still look at what's going on there and make sure that we have this like standard of excellence. It's one of our like core values that everything has to be excellent. So that's kind of the monitoring stage there. For me, I'm looking much more into the Middle East and what that market represents at the moment. So there's a lot of business development going over there. At the moment, we're working on the Natural History Museum, which is set to open on the 22nd of November to the public. So that's incredibly exciting. We've built up a really great relationship with the Department of Culture and Tourism over there. And we're also working on another very, very famous building in Dubai that will open in October. So that's our kind of Middle East focus at the moment. But we do everything from museums to full experiences to little pop-ups and art installations. It really is. I think Weta has the same attitude. It's kind of yes and that's coming from the founders really of going, they started literally with nothing. And just from taking a punt, really, they now own this incredible company with incredible people working there. So
yeah, but you said that New Zealand is very quiet. You did go from Beijing to back to New Zealand. What was that transition like?
well, I came over before the kids. So I came over and first thing I did, to be honest, was buy a puppy that I could train before the kids came over and like wrecked it. So I did that, bought a house, brought the kids over. And actually they weren't going to move over the time they did, but they'd come over Christmas before COVID. And then I said to their dad, you know what, just leave them here because it's, only 2 weeks that year until Chinese New Year. So leave them here. And then he came out of
Lucky.
Chinese New Year to collect them. Lucky, because otherwise they would have been stuck, because they don't have New Zealand passports. So gosh knows, that was just like something I remain incredibly grateful for that they happened to come out. But even now, the girls miss it a little bit because it's lively and it's always open, right? Beijing. Whereas if we have clients come out, we try and not have them come out on a Monday because nothing's open. So they fly into this ghost town.
Let's go out for dinner. Not.
And also, if they're coming over from a country where there's not, festivities openly available, then the first thing they want to do when they get here is potentially go to a pub and they're all closed. So, And you walk on a Sunday. I was watching this reel and it was like, there's a country where there are more sheep than people. It's this far away from any other civilization. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to live there. And then it went New Zealand. I'm like, oh, I live here. So, pros and cons.
That's great. You said before that when you choose creatives, you think of somebody that might fit within a boundary or ones that go really free. When you're thinking about the staff that you assign an immersive experience to, is that changing a lot, or do you have sort of a core team, or are you constantly seeking out new talent? How does that work for you?
I have to say that I'm always interested in the upcoming talent because especially in today's society, I think we really need to support them to grow. I am, I hate to be cliche. We have a lot of women in our creative team and they are exceptional, and trying to give them a voice in what is essentially still a little bit of a male dominated area. So there's that. But again, it's dependent on the client. You're matching the personalities to the client. So if you've got a client that is quite intense and really wants to, ponder over every decision, then there's this person that will enjoy that and love that. And then if you've got these people and these are usually people that are coming from business success that have decided that they want to do an immersive experience. So they don't necessarily have the background in immersive, then they're just happy to go on the ride. And so you need the people that will match that kind of energy. So I think it's more of matching the energies of the client. But a lot of the time we need to work with the client to kind of reverse brief, especially if they don't have experience. And that's drawing out what do they need. And only once we get that really clear brief can we assign the right people to it. But yeah, we're really lucky. We have exceptional people that have a very varied background, which you only hear about. I mean, this is the thing. You only hear about that Friday drinks and you start hearing what people have as everyone at Weta has a second kind of interest. So they'll do their job and then they're creating incredible art in some other form on the side that they just don't talk about. So yeah, it's great.
That's good. I think that, it's really important to have, true artists in the team. And then I guess that when you're assembling that team though, how many come or have theatrical background, as in theatre background, versus
That is
not?
a really interesting question. And
How
I'm
does
not
that
sure
play
if,
out in the yeah.
I'm not sure if I should say this on this podcast, but I'm going to anyway in the hope that people will go on our website and apply, is that what we have learned is, let's look at project management, for example. There are 3 types of project managers that are available to us for immersive experiences. They come from the film background, the construction background, or the theatre background, because immersive experiences has really only become a thing in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, right? So what we're really noticing is the theatre background is a really good match for immersive experiences. There is so much crossover. The construction background doesn't necessarily work as well because construction people are very process driven, and creatives, as you will know, being a creative yourself, want space. They don't want process. They don't want boundaries. They want to be able to get to this point. So, and then like from the film background, that's also very process driven and there's very distinct roles. Whereas in immersive experience and theater, I think there's crossover. Everybody kind of just steps over each other, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a negative way, but you all just go, okay, I'll grab this and I'll own it and I'll make it work somehow. You know, when someone says, we want this prop, and someone's like, no, well, it can't be done for budget, whatever. A theatre person is more likely to go, you know what, I'm going to grab from here and I'm going to grab from there and I'm going to move that. And yeah, so I think theatre people are definitely our focus for recruitment at the moment, having spent the last 6 years trying to make it work. Doesn't mean to say that the people we've had from those backgrounds haven't done an exceptional job. They absolutely have, but like you just need to be so like adaptable in immersive experiences. And I think like I always say people that do improv are really like, if you have a background in improv, you're probably going to be very successful because it's just whatever comes up. You might need a moment, but then you can work something out, you know? So
Yeah, well, I never thought about it like that, but yeah, Impro is such a great launching pad for that ability to adapt, especially with information coming at you fast. The interesting thing for me is because, I've done a fair bit of, in and around Hong Kong or other places just to help people out or friends out with some events and things like that. And when people have come from that event industry, and I think maybe the immersive experience is the same, is that there's, especially in an immersive experience or an event, like no matter what it is, it's still a theatrical journey. And there's some synapses that theatre people have that are so automatic, they don't even know that that's there because they've been trained that way. But when you put that person next to an event person who doesn't have any history in theatre, those differences become really, really clear and obvious. Would you agree?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's literally in the last year I've said to my boss, I just want theatre people. But it's also like, if you think, like I have an image right now of you on the Wuhan stage and Franco kind of going like, we have a whole show. And then at the last minute, it's change this, change this, change this. And that's acceptable in theatre. But in any other industry, it's like, well, how does that go with schedule, budget, etc.? So yeah, I think, yeah, we just like being cursed, really.
This is true. I mean, I think Franco was the master of the last minute change more than any other
my
theatrical
word.
on a grand scale. And I'd often credit my adaptability to working with him just because
for sure.
He forces you to push the boundaries of what you believe are possible and capable. And I always remember back in the day, I don't know if I've ever told this story, but when we were making the House of Dancing Water, we were talking about electrical motorbikes coming out of the water. And one of the technical directors, in a casual conversation, said to Franco, "Oh, that's impossible." And Franco said,
dear.
Franco said, "Prove it."
Wow.
And it's something that, like, whenever a technical person comes to me now and says something is impossible, in my head, I have Franco's voice in my head saying, "Prove it," you know? And in that, I have made things happen that I never thought would happen.
Yep. I had a very similar conversation with someone a couple of months back, and they outlined on a whiteboard why something wasn't possible. And I said, never come to me to tell me why something is impossible. Come to me with solutions and tell me that it's going to be tricky and we'll find a way around it and we'll work together, but don't tell me it can't be done. And so I think that is the key to, success in anything. And I kind of teach that to my girls of going, it is that resilience that you need, right, in life. That it's not always going to be easy. It's all like there is going to be hard work to get to where you want to go. But, eventually it's worth it, I think.
And especially in the creative space, if you're trying to create something new or break a boundary that doesn't exist before, that can be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I have also throughout my entire career, I've got an amazing idea. And I've gone and I've pitched it. And then even to a week ago where I'm like, I've got this. And, it always falls flat, but it's that excitement of going, okay, how can we generate something new? And I think with immersive experiences, it is the solution to the boredom that comes from social media, right? So getting people out of their house to theater or immersive experiences is absolutely the key to us having, fun, I guess, in the future.
Do you think that's getting harder?
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges we face is how can we, when everybody has access to everything on their phone, they have walkthroughs of experiences, etc. How can we make it meaningful, exciting, and, enticing enough? Our owner, one of our owners, Richard, his whole premise is how do you get people, and this is literally his words, to give a shit? So, we have one experience here that's Gallipoli here in the National Museum that they did before I started. And it was meant to run for 5 years. It's now been running for 10 years. It's just been optioned again. The nation has 4.2 million people, I think, and 4.5 million people have been through it. So for New Zealand, that's incredible. But a lot of the curators, some of the curators resigned because Richard came in and he's like, you need to get that adult, kind of that young adult teenage audience. And you need to give them something that is not, an artifact and words. You need to give them an experience. So they're these beautiful, you can look it up, Gallipoli at Te Papa, and they're beautiful, hyper-realistic figures, large scale giants, we refer to them. And what they did is they took, instead of giving the chronology, they took diary entries of 7 different people that were in Gallipoli. One was a nurse, one was a doctor, and others were soldiers. And they just have this freeze frame of these hyper-realistic figures. One of them is the nurse, and it's just her kind of cradled over crying. And she's reading the letter that basically she's joined the army to go and see her brother, to be with her brother who's in Gallipoli. And she's reading the letter that says he's died while she's on the boat on her way to Gallipoli. And that moment, which is in a bell jar, and it's only a 700 meter squared, 750 meter squared experience, but that has people just sitting there crying, So it's I think both theatre and immersive experiences can take you on this journey that is so impactful that it stays with you. And I always kind of say someone needs to, for an experience to be excellent, you need to go in with a little bit of understanding about the subject matter. Then you need to be engrossed. And then when you come out, if you're thinking about it for the next few days, and it's the same with the theatre project, then it's got you, then it's a success, whether that be because you're laughing, because you're upset, that's how success is measured, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that there's a lot this is probably a personal opinion of mine, but also because I'm in the media space as well as in the industry. I think that there's a lot to be worked on in the arts for that storytelling to get people motivated to go and see something. And there's many different ways that people in the theatre world or in the immersive space world can tell the story of, whether it be behind the scenes of how it was made and through the phone that everybody, you have to capture people where people are looking, right? And if people are looking at their phone, then you need to tell a story that gets them to get off their phone and go to that show. And we're not trained in the industry necessarily in that. And I don't even know if there's a roadmap anyway of how that happens. But I think that my constant thought right now when I'm making projects or doing things is like, how can we tell the story of this? And and what's beautiful about the House of Dancing Water was when we remounted recently in my project that I recently did, there was a documentary team following the process. And I always thought originally 15 years ago when we made the show the first time, wow, what a missed opportunity. And that was also kind of the time that reality TV and everything was just sort of coming onto the scene. So maybe it was a little bit early for that. But now there was a team that followed that whole process. And
that's amazing.
And it will come out at some point. But I think that's really a way to double down on, opening those doors and sharing those stories. And whether it's, like you said, the beauty of the story or the narrative that you're trying to tell and getting people to want to see that in person, or about the people that make it and the complexity that they're like, wow, now that I've seen all this background stuff, now I need to go see the show itself,
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And by the way, some of my colleagues went to see the new House of Dancing Water and they were blown away. So congratulations on that. I mean, what a pressure to remount that to be even more exceptional than the first one, right? I mean,
yeah, I didn't think it was possible, but
I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go and see it. So
yeah, well, let me know when you do. I'd love to host you. Yeah, I think that it's challenging just generally with fighting for attention in the space. And is there a lot of discussions at Weta about that in terms of when you're creating a project, or because I think maybe in the Saudi Arabia and those spaces, there still is quite a growth in the arts in that space as opposed to other markets. What's your thoughts there?
In terms of,
there's a lot of investment in the arts in Saudi Arabia and immersive experiences and things like that, right? And is that people paying attention to it, or?
I think absolutely there's the drive for that. I mean, we know that with oil doing what it is in the market, like Saudi have also had to diversify, and so they are looking into like immersive experiences and film, etc. But there's a kind of double-edged sword there because there are, Western companies coming to market that maybe aren't there's a lot of brilliant companies coming to market, but there's the other ones that potentially aren't giving us a good credibility there, which happens in any emerging market. We all see feast or famine and we go for the feast. So I think there's a little bit of a risk there for Western companies in getting in ahead and proving themselves ahead of, people getting a little bit skeptical, because I saw that in China very quickly when other companies because obviously Dragone was kind of the first of its kind of a Western company to go into China on that scale. So there's that aspect of it, but there's also the beautiful thing about Saudi, and I love it. Like, I'm also obsessed with abayas. They're the most comfortable outfits on the planet. I have about 6, and I've just ordered another 3 and for anyone that has like the Saudi kind of thing, is that the Crown Prince has said you don't need to wear abayas and you don't need to wear your headdress. So I don't do it out of, a necessity. I do it because it is like wearing pajamas to work. So, but yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about Saudi is that people have had so much time where they have been kind of, I guess, underground, that they just want to come out and play now, right? So like we went for this meeting and we met this amazing team, and they loved film because they'd been secretly watching it. And then there was this guy who was 50, and he'd been in his home, been playing guitar, and was a major kind of thrash metal guitarist. And for the first time in his life, he played to a public, and
Wow.
listening to him retell that moment at the age of 50, and he's now a really successful artist. I mean, they're the stories that are just really beautiful to tell. And there's a lot of change happening there. And I think the problem that we face, because Weta is a very ethical company, is being able to see the difference between like the media projection and what Saudi are trying to do in terms of evolving and reducing some of the constraints it has. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's beautiful artifacts, and there's the only problem is understanding that culture, which, like China, I mean, there's a saying in China that you spend a day in China, you write a book. You spend a month, you write a magazine article. You spend any longer than that, you just give up because you'll never truly understand it. And I think that might be the same with Saudi. So
that's a good observation. I also second your love of wearing abayas. I remember the first time I went in 2018, and I realized I could wear my workout gear under the abaya and be comfortable all day. Yeah, and you didn't have to worry about what to wear, because you just put on a black abaya. Off you go. I was like, this is great.
And trainers.
Too many choices. No choice needed. So good. They got it figured out. So we always finish our podcast with the same question. So I'm going to ask you these now. Tell us, what is your most favorite thing about your job or the industry?
I think my most favorite thing at the moment is, even though I am the age I am, I still have the delight of being mentored.
That's fantastic. By who?
Yeah. By my boss. It's great. And actually, a lot of people, but I still feel like when I look back at my career, the trajectories that had the most impact were when I had a really good mentor that could really guide me. So I guess that's the best thing. And also, I hate to say it, but I love going after contracts. So just winning contracts, really.
That's great. And if you could change one thing about the industry or the job, what would you do? What would you change?
Or, you know what? If I could change one thing about the industry, it would be the confidence levels of the people in the industry. Because even listening to you when you made that statement about, I've helped people do events, I'm in my head, I'm going, you're so underselling yourself. I've seen the events you've worked on, and they're insane, but there's something within our industry where we give ourselves the tall poppy syndrome effect, and the minds that exist in creative arts are, I think, the only other place you find them are in maths and science, right? So, I mean, English is also beautiful, but I would equate the creative arts in what it has the ability to achieve for humans, the same as scientists looking into quantum physics. It's that same something in the soul that just is invigorated by absorbing what is created. So
it's such a good perspective. I have a coach that I speak to, and she's American, and I had to explain to her tall poppy syndrome because she also pointed that out. I'm like, let me tell you about Australia.
Yeah.
And
And I
there's a
think
lot
New
of,
Zealand suffers that as well.
yeah, and there's a lot of, I guess, undoing of that psychology and self-talk. And
Yeah.
it's interesting when you work with somebody who can observe you and observe the way you talk about things and point it out. And you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I am saying things in that manner. It's been a bit of a journey for me to sort of like address that. But it's interesting that you say that. I think, and it is something that people in the arts, also because maybe they don't know how to advocate for their skills because it's not necessarily labeled or accompanied by certificates or awards. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't, like I said, even we started this podcast with you, it was like, what do you do and how do you account for that? And it's really a creative life is something that is a collection of many, many different experiences piling on top of each other to become a mastery of some kind of craft. And then how to describe that to somebody is really difficult.
So true.
So my final question is for somebody who's sort of starting out into the industry and for somebody who hires people, how do people become visible to you? What kind of profile attracts you and how do people get into your universe in terms of wanting to be part of what you do in immersive experiences? What are you looking for?
I am absolutely looking for passion, of course, but so I'm going to fall back to Richard Taylor again in that I watch him. We sometimes have like groups of young people come in and the person that he's attracted to is not necessarily the person that has the university degree, but that wide-eyed, like absorbing information, enthusiastic, that kind of can-do attitude. Again, the kind of yes and. So seeing people that have like gone out on a limb, tried something. I don't care if you've had 10 failed businesses. If you're like, sometimes we have people come in just off the streets and with Weta, we'll always respond to people that want a meeting and want to like show us their ideas. And this one time I met with this truck driver who had this idea, and I won't say what it is, but it was an idea that had already been done. But I spent an hour with him, and if we could have helped him, we would have to get that off the ground just because he was passionate. You know, it didn't matter that he had no experience. He had this idea, and like Hobbiton, which is probably the most famous place in New Zealand because of the Lord of the Rings, it being a Lord of the Rings set. That wasn't founded off, some business person. That was the guy who owns the land's son saying, hey, we should do something with this, So it's that kind of the willingness to fail, I think.
Such as the creative life, huh?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Catherine, so thank you so much for joining the StageLink podcast today. I really appreciate it. And it's so good to see your face and hang out with you again.
You too. Hopefully we'll meet up in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the StageLink podcast. StageLink is an online platform that gives you access and connection to the live performing arts. As a guest, you can read about live performing arts from across the globe and gain insights from performers and artists on stage and all the amazing people who work behind the curtain. If you are an industry professional, StageLink Pro offers jobs, networks, and career support tools, and you can build your own professional profile on the site. As a StageLink podcast listener, you are eligible for 20% off your StageLink Pro membership. Visit us at stagelink.com and when joining, use the code SLPodcast. StageLink, that's StagelYNC.com.